Hello everyone, my name is Eduardo Fimeister and I'm going to present to you one of the courses related to trustworthy AI and the risk management or risk assessment tool. Specifically, this course is about risk assessment, and there's another one that is risk management, so if you're interested in that component, please visit the other course. Over here, we are going to be dedicated more to the initial components that are required to jump into everything that is the risk management of AI assets later on. So if you are interested in how the ethical considerations were considered for AI assets and how they were transformed in trustworthy requirements for later on develop a tool assessment that is the TAI tool, just continue with me in this course, okay? So first, this course is going to have different content. First, we are going to have an introduction, and in this introduction, we are going to be talking about ethical concepts. Later on in this course, we are going to talk about values and how the values can be incorporated within AI assets. And also after that, we are going to talk specifically about the trustworthy AI requirements. Later, after we cover the trustworthy requirement and we talk about each one of the 7 requirements settled by the European Commission, we are going to talk about one of the tools that exists for a self-assessment. This tool that's called TAI is supported by the European Commission, and it's important to consider that it allows multi-stakeholder evaluation. So the same tool can be evaluated for different partners, and therefore you can have a broader sensation of what could be missing or what kind of modifications could be performed in the way the AI assets are developed. So let's go first with the introductions to ethical concepts within artificial intelligence. So let's assume that we are interacting with a chatbot, for example, could be Siri, could be others, but we can ask something as simple for a human like, should I lie about my weight in a dating profile? Of course, depending on the values of the humans, this answer can be positive or negative. But when we are talking about artificial intelligence, we have different stages that we have to consider how this answer is going to be constructed. First, we have to have a full understanding of each of the considerations of components that this question is constructed, what means weight, what means light, etc. And this understanding will be allowed to come to the different or the continuum of the consideration of the answer that should be provided. What it means being lying, what is dishonesty, that this is correct or not correct. Each one of these considerations is linked to the ethical component of the answer, okay? And that is kind of like what will be the main focus of this consideration if we are going to be developing a self-aware AI asset that it will be performed in an ethical way. Of course, could be other technical components in this kind of answering process that the chatbot is producing, but it's not the discussion mainly of this course. So let's talk about a little bit about the topics of ethics in artificial intelligence. We know that artificial intelligence has been increasing its use in the society in the different domains, healthcare, manufacturing sector, banking, etc., etc., etc. For example, everyone is at the moment fully aware of the capacities of ChatGPT, and there's others that are going to come and compete with this tool. And the impact, actually, we can see the impact that these tools are having right now in society can be meaningful. And therefore, the governments are aware of this impact that could be positive or negative, depending how these AI assets are handled. Therefore, it's important that the approaches exist to manage this AI asset in an ethical manner, depending on how they are going to be interacting with humans. Normally, when in the past, when we have been considered the dystopia of the world when considering artificial intelligence, there have been 2 trends. One is the replacement of the workforce, and another is the journalistic perspective that says the artificial intelligence will dominate the humankind. These are not necessarily what is happening right now. Of course, we can see that, but the idea is that we are going to have developing more powerful tools. They perform in some sort of way that the way that humans think and then the human interact. When we are going to be talking about ethical concepts in artificial intelligence, we can do a comparison when we are using or applying other mechanisms or assets, and they are interacting with humans. This trust consideration, when it's related to, for example, a television or a roller coaster or other mechanisms that have been using or being accepted by society in the past, normally they have been asked to be robust. That means that they perform in the same way over time, or given that the data that they are provided or the inputs can have some noises incorporated, the performance are going to kept in certain range. And at the same time that these assets are lawful in terms of the local regulations and general regulations that are being set for them to be implemented. When we talk about artificial intelligence, there's other considerations that we have to settle, specifically because as an artificial intelligence is an agent that has the capability to learn and also predict or forecast outputs that the human users can be used for different tasks or different processes. The idea of the ethical component comes because the artificial intelligence have a certain sense of autonomy, and therefore the artificial intelligence have to perform in an ethical manner or have the outputs come in an ethical manner in order to be accepted by society. So when we talk about these ethical components, normally people could be confused of different wording that can be existed for them. These wording are ethics, morality, and values. The ethics is basically a field of human goals and evaluation of the analysis of the behaviors of human, and it's focusing on the action of what's supposed to be right and what is wrong. But there's considerable differences when we talk about ethics, moralities, and values. Morality refers more to actions, while ethics refers to the reasoning behind such action. Okay? The other thing is ethics is concerned more with principles and with general judgments and norms. Morals are related more to subjective or personal judgments and values. So values can be considered a subclass of a morality of the human. Values are more specific to individuals or specific to a local region. So when we are going to be considered the development or deployment of an AI asset in a specific location, we have to be aware of the local values that have to be fulfilled for acceptance of that AI element. Now, ethics is a broad domain as different schools. This school, for example, we have descriptive ethics that is focused in the normative explanation. We have prescriptive ethics that is basically the analysis of the actions and what are recommended to be right action or wrong action. For example, something simple like steal is bad. This is a recognized bad action depending of the specific and sub-analysis that are performed in this action. We have sub-schools in this case. For example, we have the consequential approach that they focus in a general society evaluation of the impact of this action. We have the deontological approach that is basically the analysis of the intention versus the duty, what is done versus what is should be done. And finally, we have the virtuous ethic approach that use some specific moral components or moral actions or virtues that could be considered for the actions. So we can say that the artificial intelligence in the act could be act, for example, under courage and temperance. These are more specific virtues for humans, but we don't know in the future what will be that the case for the implementation of artificial intelligence. Now, when we go back to the schools, we have also the meta-ethics that is related more to a higher level analysis of ethics, that is the existence, the meaning, and the knowledge of it. And finally, we have the applied ethics that are specific to the domain of implementation. This is important because it could be certain overlaps depending on the domain that we are considering. For example, there could be some ethical principles in business that can be transferred or be considered for healthcare, but that doesn't mean that they have to fulfill completely the same perspective of how they see these actions or the way that incorporate the behaviors of humans given these specific domains. Now, when we talk about how we can implement a little bit the ethical components or ethical consideration, we can talk about the in design, by design, and for design approach. The in design, we can think is the approach that can be using during the design of the system. So this is really more related to the development of AI assets and how we can incorporate, not necessarily in the actions of the asset, but how we are designing it in an ethical manner. So that means following a structure or an approach, a framework as a standard that's going to secure that, for example, there's different stakeholders implemented in the development of the AI asset. When we jump, for example, to something different, by design, we can think as by itself. That means that the outputs of the actions of the artificial intelligence are going to be in an ethical manner. So even though we can develop algorithms that are going to define these actions, we have to secure that these actions are recognized and accepted by the ethical concepts or considerations that are laid down for the artificial intelligence component. And finally, the ethics for design, that is more related to the lawful component. This has been covered in other courses over here in Regulate, so if you are interested, you can please go to the other courses, but it's more related to the for design for the implementation of ethics in lawful manner and how they are going to be implemented laws that are considering the different ethical requirements. But at the end, one of the considerations of if we're going to be thinking about ethics in robot is and their actions, what should be right and what should be wrong. And therefore, if we think as an artificial intelligence and a specific agent, we are considered not only in the human development of this tool, but it's the action especially on a robotic component. So it's important when we are going to be talking artificial intelligence, talk about or understand what is artificial intelligence and the different schools that artificial intelligence can be classified. Artificial intelligence has different definitions, but we are going to be used the one that you are seeing right now in the screen. That is the field that study, develop, and work on computational agents that act intelligent. So one of the things that we have to be aware that when we talk about artificial intelligence, there's different schools that do the analysis different on the trends of acting, that is performing, or thinking, and the other axis if we are going to be performing optimally or like a human. That means that there's a differentiation between the human acting and the optimally that exists different algorithms of approach for predict optimal situations of optimal conditions. So each one of these corners of that diagram that you see in the slides refer to the different schools. For example, we have agents that think optimally, we have agents that think like a human, we have agents that act optimally, and we have agents like act like a human, okay? So depending, of course, in which one of these schools is the AI component considered, there could be different ethical considerations to be deployed in there. Specifically, is we are going to consider the, for example, the act like a human. That means that we have to fulfill the trends that, or the manner that humans act in an ethical manner, okay? Of course, artificial intelligence are going to have different subfields, and depending of their application, could be considered that they belong to specific schools. So for example, robots could think that they act like a human, okay, and therefore they are going to have a specific requirement. Over here in the screen, you are seeing the definition, for example, one of the different subfields of artificial intelligence, that is the machine learning, that focusing in the creation of algorithms that learn from data and perform or can be used to do prediction based on the learned information. These outputs can be optimized and is keeping track of their functionality, giving some measures to see how well it performs, okay? In the case of machine learning, we have different training processes that can be used in order to foster these learning processes. That's why we have supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. And depending on them, of course, different techniques and different way of foster the implementation of ethical concept could be considered. So let's jump a little bit now to another topic, that is values and trust considerations. So when we talk about values, we link it before or correlated to the moral concepts. But values are a key component in the human decisions. And it's important that if we are going to be considering incorporating values within the artificial intelligence component, we have to understand what values are. Normally, values can be defined by general considerations, that there's different ways to be analyzed in a given system. And the other thing is they are comparable. So that means that there could be a metric or a way that we can evaluate a certain state of that value. For example, you have in the screen a value of health. It is general in the sense that we can track of this value in different ways. For example, activities, going to the gym. We have also sleeping trends, or we have the eating that we have daily. And depending on how we are performing in this, each one, we can have different output of these values that is health. Of course, could be metrics that keep track of this value that is health. For example, we have over there in the screen the BMI, that is body mass index, and that could be used kind of a measure of the health consideration of a certain human that is concerned about their health. Okay? Now, when we are going to jump into computer science, of course, it's completely different what are the different values that we could incorporate or analyze in the assets. In the left side of the screen, you are seeing right now a list of some of these computational science values that are considered for artificial intelligence. Of course, this list can be extended, but it gives you a reference of how variable or could be the consideration that's going to be for specifically computational science. That doesn't mean that the artificial intelligence component can be focused only on these values, because depending on the domain that are going to be implemented, there are other values that have to be considered. For example, in the right side, you see more manufacturing sector values that can be considered. I'm not going to go for each one of them, so if you want, you can stop the presentation and just review them and analyze them a little bit. But it's important to consider that we have computational science values that could be incorporated, and we have also at the same time the domain-specific values that can be incorporated. Now, one important thing that to see when we talk about value is they can be contradictory. So that means that we have to come with mechanisms in order to define what are the best strategies to implement different values or select one over the other. This, of course, can be the analysis of different stakeholder considerations, and depending on the domain, exists different tools to perform this. For example, in the manufacturing sector, we have tools like ANP, AHP, or decision trees that can be helped to define what could be the best values to be incorporated in the assets. Now, you see in the screens this diagram that represents how the value can be contradictory. Those crosses one are completely contradictory. For example, if you go to the top left, you have those that are defined to openness to changes. Okay, that is simulation, self-direction. Where you go bottom right, you have that are conservatory, and that are completely contradictory to the other ones. So it's important to define where could these values be recognized, classified, and therefore managed by the groups that are interested in to incorporate different values in the AI elements. Now, when we're going to be talking about how we can incorporate values, for example, in computer science, there's different approaches, but one of these ones is proposed by Virginia Dignam, and the idea is that values, for example, the same case that we were talking about health, can be translated into certain norms that give an ability kind of correlation to some KPIs or metrics that can be helped to keep track of them. For example, this BMI index that we were talking about. And of course, this has to be at the end translated in functionalities. In the case of the health consideration, for example, the type of food I can have, the type of activities I have to do weekly. So this functionality, of course, when we are going to be talking about computer science, are going to be more technical, but these functionalities can be merged with the typical processes that exist in the development on computer science assets. For example, from non-functional requirement to functional requirement, and then operational and physical elements that incorporated, and therefore you can merge at the end each one of these and produce a set that includes the values specified by the different users. So what do we want at the end when we talk about artificial intelligence? Well, we have two perspectives depending of what the producers or users want for artificial intelligence and what the European Commission sees as a vision or important right now of the AI assets. When you see in the slide, for example, with the first one, the first bracket is related to the users of AI system, and one of the most that can catch attention is maximize the benefits of certain actions or processes while minimizing the risk. This specifies not only that we're looking for benefits, but also that we are minimizing the possibility of being damaged when using this AI asset. Other, for example, product users or producers' objectives of using artificial intelligence can be also sustainable development. That involves not only the economical aspect, but of course it's going to be considered the environmental and the societal aspect of it. When we talk about the European Commission vision, it's more related to a general perspective of awareness of the component of AI set and the impact they can have in society. For example, as you can see in the list, we have increasing public and private investment of AI and boost its uptake, preparing society for socio-economic changes, etc., etc., etc. So to support this implementation of the European Commission vision, it first created or gathered a group of experts on artificial intelligence called High-Level Expert Group on Artificial Intelligence that was established with two main objectives. First is define AI ethic guidelines, and the second is define strategies for policy and investment recommendations. So now that we have covered a little bit everything related to ethical concepts, at the end, when we land in the user point of view, the user is going to be using the AI sets only if they trust on their results and their actions. So in order to be trust, we have to secure that the interaction of the agent, human robot or human AI component, follows certain trends. Trust means that we are going to be given the possibility of to being harmed by another agent, and therefore it's considerably important to have this consideration of trust in different elements. When we talk about trust in AI, we have therefore different requirements that we, as has been seen before, that has to be lawful, ethical, and robust. And the AI for people in 2018 came out with 5 principles that have to be defined or analyzed by the different AI sets in order to be deemed trustful. These are non-maleficence, beneficence, autonomy, justice, and explainability. I'm not going to go through that, but it's important to recognize them because giving them is that we lay down in the trustworthy AI requirement. Okay? So this requirement uses not all of the ethical principles that were defined. It uses 4, beneficence was not incorporated, and we end up with the trustworthy AI considerations. So now we are going to continue and analyze a little bit the trustworthy AI requirements. So first we have human agency and oversight, and it includes different considerations. As you can see over here, he has the fundamental right consideration that the European Commission have already set different fundamental rights, and you can access it easily through the web. You have the human agency that they make the consideration that humans should be able to make informed, autonomous decisions, and at the same time, this gives a sensation that how is the data or the predictions of the AI is going to be impacting the human decisions. That is an important consideration because, for example, in the manufacturing sector, it could be the decisions or the propositions made by artificial intelligence will always be accepted as truth. So that gives us another perspective of how we can have a human oversight, or the human will have a certain control over the artificial intelligence elements or the systems in general. So there's 3 different approaches that we can have. One is human in control, another is human on the loop, and the other is human in the loop. When we talk about human in the loop, we refer when the human is going to be directly interacting in the line of process with artificial intelligence. I would refer again, for example, to the manufacturing sector, where right now it can be seen the trend that the robots are continually interacting with humans in the area to improve the performance and increase the benefits in this specific domain. Okay, so the human, since has its own agency, can have or can stop the actions performed in between that are generated in this line of process. Completely contrary, we have a human in control that is going to be a full foreseeing of the system. Okay, so that means that the human is going to have a full control of all the stages that are deployed in the system. Nevertheless, these considerations is not necessarily applicable in every case because depend on the dynamics of the systems. If the system dynamics are relatively fast, for example, let's say a continuous reactor system, and we want to incorporate certain artificial intelligence, it's going to be hard to control the process or have a full control of the artificial intelligence component within what is processing happening right now. And finally, we have human on the loop perspective that gives a general decision cycle or perspective of the system, and it could be seen more related to the development stage. Okay. Now we have the technical robustness and safety, and as you can see in the screen, we have other 4 different components that secure the technical robustness and safety. First, we have the resilient attack and security AI. Then we have the fallback plans for general safety. We have the accuracy, and finally we have reliability and reproducibility. The last two, we can think that first, the accuracy is related more to have correct judgment, or the outputs of the system can be accurate. And in technical perspective, we have metrics that can be used to track this consideration. And on the other hand, we have, when we talk about the reproducibility, we talk a little bit more like, for example, the concept of precision, because some certain noise could be incorporated in the data, and we have to try to make the AI asset in order to be able to handle this dispersity or these noises and come with sound outputs or predictions given by the system. The other ones, the resilience, total security, and fault blank plans, are more related to the safety, and therefore is not only about just in general in concept, but how we can incorporate in the different stages fallback plans on general safety for the interaction that could lay down with humans. When we talk about privacy and data governance, I am not going to go big in this topic because there are courses in Regulate that have specified for GDPR. So there's a broad courses that you can go and see them. But in general perspective, privacy and governance deal with privacy and data protection, quality and integrity of data, and access to data. Importantly, the second one, that is the quality of data, could be more a technical component that we have to consider. So because we have to perform or secure data curation before it enters the process and the learning stages of the AI elements. Then we have the transparency. The transparency is related to traceability, explainability, and communication. Traceability we can see, for example, in the same way that we can track from the origins of certain foods. We want to have something similar when we are going to be processing some data. So we want to have the traceability of depending of the output. We have a negative output, trace it back of the origins of this data set that was used or the data that was provided by the users in order to come with this. Explainability is more related to that human understanding of the processes that involve not only the result, but also how it was performed, the decisions. And this is a complex area in that technical perspective because some of the algorithms like neural networks are considered black boxes that is difficult to access. Nevertheless, there are different tools depending on the use of the artificial intelligence. For example, the neural networks, if we are going to be used for image processing, there are different techniques that can be used and implemented for their application. Finally, the communication is just a general perspective, how going to be the interactions and provide some sort of communication and approaches to address this specific requirement component related to it. Now, when we go to diversity, non-discriminatory, and fairness, we have avoidance of unfair bias, accessibility of universal design, and stakeholder participation. I'm not going to go deep on this. This is more broad, but there are different processes that can consider when we talk about avoidance of unfair bias. Normally, bias are the three different stages that can be processed. Normally, bias can be algorithmically be processed in the data, can be processed in the algorithm, or can be processed at the output. Depending on which stage is intervened, the system, of course, there are going to be different techniques that can be implemented. And depending on also the functionalities, because it's not the same thing that how we are going to be securing, that how we are going to avoid bias in image processes, and how we are going to be avoiding bias in just matrix data, and how to recognize it. Then we have societal and environmental well-being that has three components. It includes sustainability and environmental friendly AI, social impact, and society and democracy. The first one is related that the process of generated AI and the training process or hopefully the prediction help in the environmental sustainable perspectives, okay? When we have the other two, there is more related to social perspectives. One is the consideration that we know that artificial intelligence can impact negatively the society, so this bring awareness of these impacts. And the last one is just society and democracy, that give extra attention to artificial intelligence that can be used in democratic processes. And therefore, for example, balloting and evaluation of this data must have extra awareness and analysis, and be careful about the way that they are implemented in that. We have finally accountability that includes auditability, minimization, reporting, and negative impacts, trade-off, and redress. From this, we can just say that redress is directly redress given a negative consideration, and the consideration of trade-off is more general perspective of a higher level, that we can have different trustworthy requirements that as values can be contradictory. Therefore, we can implement the same tools or technical approach to secure or define which will be the most convenient trustworthy requirements to be implemented for the asset. Now, how we implement this? There are technical methods and non-technical methods. When we refer to the non-technical methods, the European Commission have defined some lists or some approaches that can be used. For example, we have the standard, regulation, certification, et cetera, These are in the process of development and not necessarily finished. But of course, the definitions are going to impacting the technical methods. Now, when we talk about that these components have to be trustworthy by fulfilling each of the trustworthy requirements, it could be a consideration of the risks that they are not going to be fulfilled or there are going to be some violation. Therefore, there exists some mechanisms to assess or manage the AI trustworthy requirement. In terms of assessment, we have a supporting tool supported by the European Commission that is called TAI, or the Assessment List for Trustworthy Artificial Intelligence. The goals of it are different, but generally first provide an assessing process for self-evaluation. We have also provide awareness of relevance or assets on functionalities that can be missing to be incorporated in order to secure a trustworthy AI development. And additionally, at the same time, by applying this tool, we are going to have an understanding of the different trustworthy requirements. Additionally, the goals include raise awareness of the potential impact of AI on society and promote involvement of all relevant stakeholders, and this can be achieved by different stakeholders taking the TAI tool under the same asset under evaluation. And finally, give insight on whether meaningful appropriate solution processes exist. So let's talk a little bit about this TAI tool. The TAI tool can be accessed through the web link that is shown in the screen, and the first thing that you're going to see is this home screen that gives you the capability to create your own TAI. To have access to this homepage, of course, you have to be first created your own account. The first thing that is going to be a general explanation of how you can, of the different trustworthy elements, and you can access easily some information on how to fill the data or the information of this tool for evaluate the trustworthy requirements of the assets. So when you define that you are going to create an element, you are going to given access to this screen that you are going to be able to have an assessment needs for the different AI assets that you are evaluating. Each one of them can have different levels of completion. Ideally, of course, you will have full completion of them, but that doesn't mean that for your AI, all of them are required, because depending of, we will see in the next presentations, that depending of the risk level or the intrinsic risk classification based on the European Commission of the asset, you can have different requirements settled. Then we have, once you access the specific assessment component of the specific element, you are going to have this another home screen that will you able to have taking notes and give you access, as you can see in the left side of the screen, to the specific trustworthy requirement and evaluation. So you are going to be evaluated one by one. For example, if you enter to human agency and oversight, this is the type of screen that you're going to see. And first is going to be an explanation of what is human agency and oversight, and it's going to keep going and evaluating these different questions. These questions are going to be having different color codes that are going to be helpful for you assessing the different impacts that can have or the different state of your AI asset. Specifically, this color code is blue and red, okay? And importantly, the red colors are the ones that are going to be used for giving you a sensation of a metric of how well you're performing. The wider you are going to have, or the more red you become, you are going to be in a more dangerous zone in terms of this AI asset. Okay, this is the result at the end when you fulfill one of these trustworthy requirements. It's going to giving you as a feedback as a web graph like the one shown in the screen. And the blue ones can be used for giving you recommendation, and at the same time, the spending of the answer extend even further analysis of the information that you have. Finally, you will have some recommendations based off the information that you provide. In this screen, you are seeing generally all how the Altai tool, the different components that exist. We are not going to go through them, but just to give you awareness that there are different components that are not necessarily directly related to the trustworthy AI requirements. So I would like finally to acknowledge a system project that is an European Commission project that allows not only the analysis or evaluation of the Altai tool, but the other frameworks that are going to be used in the risk management process course. Okay, thank you very much, and I hope you like, and let's keep in touch, and you can go to the other courses. Thank you.